Oh, guess not. I'm a little disappointed. In hindsight, this is a dumb idea. That is to say, rushing to a client I barely know's home first thing in the morning with news of ghost lady potentially haunting their newly bought house. Oh, and there's a bunch of bizarre-looking pictures of Miss Hana I brought as proof, too. So yeah, dumbest idea in the history of my dumb ideas, all things considered. Traveling to the outskirts of Anselm Village at the crack of dawn will only make my bike as company equally so. Personally, I don't think any of them would take whatever I'm going to say well, no matter how nice or accommodating they are. Ashton himself would tell me the same thing. Odds are, he'll laugh at my face for good measure, if he doesn't freak out at me for not listening to his warnings. Still, that's a whole separate can of worms I'll open at a different time, seeing as I'm already standing at the Wright's front porch, waiting for someone to answer the door. More than anything, Miss Wright needs to know there's possibly nothing safe in this place. Warnings from friends to be damned.
Someone would answer the door sooner. Come on.
I try to ignore the looming presence their large, ornate doors give off as I press the doorbell for the 4th time. Its shrill ringing merely echoes, carried off by another warm passing breeze. The first time I came to this place, I found myself basking in the silence it offers. Now the atmosphere is just heavy, packed with trepidation and tension. Isabel's right. It does radiate the creepy kind of vibe. And with the image from the day before constantly flashing in my mind, the unease becomes harder to ignore as each second drifts by. Not wanting to spend more time here than necessary, I ring the bell again. Another long second ticks by without anyone answering the door. If this fails, I can always go to Ash. Not really the most sensible course of action either, but waiting here ain't doing me any good. For all I know, the Wrights could be out of town. As luck would have it, just as I'm about to turn my heel, a loud thump rises from the other side. It's followed by heavy footsteps and a string of very colorful expletives of one's parentage.
That Irish guard has cost me a fortune and she can't even fix this nuisance. And where the hell is... Your hands, if another pale-faced prat is pressing their blighted bell, I swear I'll cut their...
The door swings open and a very irate Mr. Wright greets me. His partly rumpled appearance is a clear testament to how early the hour is.
Who might you be? I don't recall asking the movers to show up this early.
I was prepared to face Mrs. Wright. Their butler more so. But Mr. Wright, I don't quite know what to make of him yet. I only caught sight of him yesterday as he was directing the movers. Although from how exasperated he sounded then, it seemed like more yelling was done than actual giving of directions. Needless to say, I'd like to believe those instances ain't all there is to this guy. Miss Wright, at the end of the day, did marry him. Standing before him like now. Him like now. I'm like that. Standing before him as I am now, though, is a different story altogether. Despite the difference in our respective heights, he managed to make it appear like he is the one looking down at me, not the other way around. An apology instinctively forms in my mouth for anything else when he arches and I rap my lack of response.
That's not exactly why I'm here, Mr. Wright, yeah?
Right, of course, the one and only. And what can I do for you this fine morning? Have I seen you somewhere before? Bloody peasants all look the same to me.
Yeah, I'm actually...
It doesn't matter, I don't care. I've got someplace important to be at today. Just spit out what you want or be gone. I haven't got all day.
His eyes are sharp and expecting in spite of his indifferent tone. The very impression of someone whose sharp wits has served him well throughout life, the kind you have to carefully choose your words around. Disconcerting how a simple conversation can easily seem like a ruthless form of social maneuvering. I can see why Miss Wright would want to steer clear of it, if only for a short while. And sometimes the only way out of the game is to be honest.
I'm in luxury living, sir.
He eyes the business card I hand him with a completely passive expression. He turns it between his fingers without really reading the letters printed before handing it back in the same blasé manner one usually reserved for people below their station, or nuisance. With him, it seems more of the latter from
Mr.
the former.
Steele.
Just Zach would do, sir.
I can see why. You should hear what they say about my name. Although I'm of the opinion those don't sound as unpleasant as yours to the ear. Amusing what people can come up with in their leisure time, no? Well then, to what reason do we owe this second visit, Zach?
Right, like I said earlier, I'm the photographer from Luxury Living. I'm here about the photo shoot yesterday and...
His eyes narrow at that, mouth tightening in a small frown, passive stance dissolving into a rigid one. It ain't a complete lie, what I came here for, but it ain't the whole truth
Didn't
either.
you already wrap that one up? I believe my wife was the one with you then. You even mentioned a little tete-a-tete with the photographer. That was you, wasn't it?
Yes. Actually, sir, there was something I forgot to discuss with your...
And you had to show up at such an hour for something you forgot. Why wasn't there any notice about this little visit?
It was an error on my part, sir. I do apologize for not letting you know in advance.
Terribly unprofessional for someone going under the name of an esteemed publication like Luxury Living, if you ask me. Of course, even if there was a word of some sort, that butler does not check my emails as often as I would have liked. But straight up walking in here this early isn't the most sensible thing to do either.
The matter was a bit urgent, and my art director wanted it done as soon as possible before I hand him the finished prints.
Not my problem now, is it? A common courtesy would be to wait for replies before barging in. You do well to remember that. I once fired someone before they could even submit an application. Sent an email in the morning and suddenly sauntered in the office looking knackered mere hours after. Bloody Watkins. That aside, unfortunately you're going to have to come back some other day. You see, darling wife left not a moment to go. I have not an inkling where she went, or when she'll be back, so you're better off.
Love, is it the movers?
He stopped speaking altogether. And I had a feeling that was going to happen. Like, placed expression he has collapses on itself. Slowly turns just as his wife walks up to him with a step too lively for comfort, a smile too sweet to be honest. She's very likely heard everything her husband and I have talked about.
Off somewhere.
I've got the few things I want them to transfer already. Marianne made this splendid arrangement for the music room and... Love, are you listening?
I thought you already left, Buttercup.
She musters a frown, a pout more like. The mischievous gleam in her eye when she glances at me says all there is I need to know. I would have laughed at her antics if it wouldn't offend the other man. But as it is, it's better to let his wife have her fun without any reaction from me. I'm treading on dangerous grounds with him already.
I most certainly have not left yet. I wouldn't be standing here if I did, would I?
I'm not even recording. Okay, well, I'll download that one from the system later. Actually, that's a bad idea. So, I'm gonna start recording. You know when things just don't quite like to turn up like you want them to, and nope, you mute yourself, sir. Ma'am, whatever my computer is, I don't really know. It's a piece of shit. I need a new computer. No, not that. That's the wrong button. Well, it's not the right thing. Oh, okay, still wrong buttons. My lord. Okay. Okay, it's doing its thing.
Of course you wouldn't be, darling. But don't you need to be somewhere else today? Something with Marianne? Shopping, girl, things?
Oh, I'll be leaving in a few. Unless you want to join us.
Oh, no, thanks, darling. I'm afraid my liver is killing me today.
I thought as much. You needn't have to worry. I'll be gone in a few. It's just that I heard we have a visitor. What kind of person would I be if I didn't greet him before leaving?
A very gracious one, I'm sure.
Zachary, right? Zach? It's a pleasure to see you again.
Likewise, ma'am. I was actually looking for you.
Is that so? What for?
A huge display of unprofessionalism is what it's for.
Shush, darling. Let the man speak. I'm sure it isn't anything like that if he has to come all the way here, yes?
It's about yesterday. The photos you asked, I mean. The copies are ready, but...
My hand still as I'm about to fish the prints out of my pocket. Short second passes that which strikes me how I didn't think this through at all. How I'll go about telling her regarding the strange photos or revealing this to her in the presence of another person. Her husband gazing over us like a hawk doesn't provide any sort of comfort either. And just like that, all the words I have been practicing to say on the way here inevitably fall stiffly off my mouth. Miss Wright must have noticed my hesitation because shortly she gives her husband's arm a gentle squeeze, a tender smile gracing her face. I like the first, this one is meant to appease.
Love, I think Hansi might need some of your input for the final guest list. Could you check on him, please?
Bollocks! Why in all Luxborn do I have to be there? Doing tedious jobs of what he's being paid for?
Because if we end up with people whose faces you do not want to show up in our housewarming party, we won't be hearing the end of it. Unless a heavy dose of liquor's involved. You know what the doctor said about that. Please do poor Hansi and your liver a favor,
He can handle that on his own, Buttercup. And my liver is doing just fine.
I'm sure it is. But I don't know, love. I think I caught a glimpse of the name Mitch Lakes, was it? I think it was Mitch Lakes on it when I checked with Hansi earlier. You should see for yourself. It was quite a list.
Who put that blighted twat in there?
And that's why I'm asking you to look over it before I do so tonight.
Very well.
But even with that promise, he doesn't appear ready to leave. Short of passing through their doors, he stops and glances back at me, all without bothering to hide the distrust in his eyes.
Yeah, I'll be fine. Go back to your butler. I'm not some pregnant wife you have to worry about.
Fine. I have to go to that little ankle-biter's career day later anyway. I don't see why I have to go there. Kylie's your goddaughter.
And yet, she has you around her little fingers, darling. That's basically the same thing.
If he ever has an answer to that, we don't get to hear it above the heavy thud of the door. And Miss Wright's own weary exhale after she's sure her husband is out of earshot. She's nothing but apologetic when she fixes her gaze back to me, and I can't help but return the same to her.
I'm so sorry you had to deal with that. My husband can be a bit trying when he really applied himself.
It's fine, Miss Wright. No harm done. It was my fault for showing up here unannounced. And this might be strange coming from me, but he does have the right to be wary. The press can be quite vicious when it wants to be.
Caught unexpectedly, they pick you apart. It is not surprising why he acted the way he did around me.
Sweetie, if Luke treats every journalist who shows up here like that, I'm afraid we'll end up with a harassment lawsuit hanging over our heads sometime in the future. Vicious or not, some sort of finesse has to be exercised when dealing with them. I'm sorry, I hope that wasn't too offensive.
Not at all, Miss Wright. Besides, I don't think an interior design magazine would be interested in who harassed who this week. Unless it has something to do with fighting over tastefully arranged furniture. But even then, I don't think our readers will be too interested.
Oh, dearie. You've got a lot to learn. You really have no idea how a single tattle can ignite a spark in a crowd. Of course, at the end of the day, it's still the thought that counts. It's still a lovely anniversary gift from my husband. No matter. Let's just go.
She doesn't wait for an answer and immediately wanders over to a car park somewhere It's not me. It's this game. Wanders over to a car parked some distance from us. Unsure, I find myself trailing after her. As she fully automatically opens the passenger side door as she nears, and she gestures for me to follow when she climbs into the back seat.
Where are we going exactly?
I need to get out of this stuffy house for a while. Moving in, planning the party. It's starting to get suffocating in there. Luke and Hansi can have their fun while I'm gone. I don't care. I'm getting out because I can. Another minute in there and I'll drown.
My bike.
There are, of course, a lot of things questionable about her invitation. Why she's asking a person she's only known for less than 2 days in the first place is one. How appropriate this is being another. But the rest of it crashes the moment she shoots me an imploring
Please.
look.
I can have someone send it back to your address later. And it's just a trip to the city for some furniture, nothing more, I assure you. Marianne will be with us, and maybe you can tell me why you're here on the way.
Guess it wouldn't hurt. I might have to leave early, though.
Excellent, then. Hop in. That's what they often say, yes?
This can't be a good idea, but I really don't have any other choice, do I? Especially with the way her eyes light up when I agreed to it. In my pocket, the very picture of her remains faceless. A voiceless shadow hanging threateningly between us, unknown to her. If someone told me I'd be spending my entire morning being dragged around half of downtown Luxborn looking for furniture, I probably would have simply smiled at them. then perhaps even giving them a good friendly pat on the shoulder and wish them a nice day. Not that I find anything wrong with this at all. On the contrary, this is most definitely a nice change of pace after weeks getting bogged down by several freelance gigs and shutting myself inside my apartment whenever I can. If only the weather would be a whole lot nicer. The kind with less sun and more clouds, perhaps. With the mid-morning sun slowly beating down on us as the high noon approaches, I can see why Mrs. Wright, or Mr. Wright, skipped out on this trip. The bright side is, the whole thing seems to have put Miss Wright in a less somber mood. After the fifth store, her pace is considerably livelier, her gestures less guarded than the ones she displayed at the mansion earlier. The presence of another person might have helped as well. Although Miss McCullough seems less predisposed to small talk, preferring to keep to herself most of the time and let Miss Wright lead us wherever. She did acknowledge me with a small nod when we were introduced earlier. But that didn't make standing outside the store together any less awkward while we wait for our client to finish her inquiry inside.
Interior design, huh?
She cast me a sidelong glance before returning to her notes again, her pen scratching against the paper in quick successive strokes. There goes that. I did say I'm not good at starting or keeping conversations going, didn't I? She doesn't look back up again. I take that as my cue to stop attempting to strike a dialogue with her and keep myself occupied with some other thing. Said what we have here is just Luxbourne and its busy streets, people going about their normal days, cars moving in and out of sight, heading to who knows where. Nothing remarkable, really. The ease with which a person can fade into the background here is reflective of the kind of city Luxbourne will always be, but the humdrum one thing I learned to live with. And this to say, it doesn't usually stay that way. There are times when it would come alive, make itself known, and reassert itself back to the world. However, those moments are few and far in between. Then again, with what graces the new channels lately, I'm starting to think it's going to happen sooner. Can't say I'm looking forward to what it'll bring.
Luxury living, is it?
Her voice effectively cuts through my thoughts just as I count the 13th passerby wearing a hat today. Besides me, I can hear the faint rustling of paper and the clicking of her pen as she stashes them back in her bag.
Excuse me, what?
The magazine you're working for. It's Luxury Living, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. You've been featured by them before, I take it?
A few years back, yes. For just some issues. My designs still appear from time to time, though not as frequent as before. Gotta have room for new talents, right?
It may not show in her face, but the pride is evident in her voice.
Folks, the people running the publication. Tell me, is DK still on the editorial team?
I wouldn't know. I've only started taking jobs from them this year. Freelancer, you know.
Good man, that guy. Anyone in our field should meet him. He had a lot of things to say about art, all of them relevant. Learned a lot from him, actually. Even I hope he's in a good place. I haven't talked to him in a while. Anyway, your portfolio must have been good if they gave you the job. They don't easily assign big features to freelancers like this.
I wouldn't say I am, but experienced, you know? The more you practice it, the more you learn the tricks of the trade. That kind of stuff.
I know what you mean. Still, you've got to keep up with the competition. Each year, a new talent emerges, and, well, you never know. Clients can be a bit fickle-minded with their choices, believe me. Speaking of, do you think you'd be up for a new client after this?
I think so. Depends on how big the project is.
She reaches into her bag again. This time to pull out a business card, which she hands over to me.
When you're free, send your portfolio to Chris. He's my assistant. He's been looking for a decent photographer to help with updating the studio's portfolio. Nothing urgent, but the sooner the better.
Not sure if I'll have the time to squeeze this in. But, alright, I'll give it a go once.
Marianne, could you look this over for me?
At that very moment, Miss Wright emerges from the store. When I look back to Miss McCullough, a mask of professionalism has returned to her. Or at least that's what it's trying to be. There's a different light in her eyes as she faces her, a flicker of familiarity and recognition. I'd say it's fondness, but that would be too presumptuous. Whatever it is doesn't last and she is briskly swept under the firm tone her voice assumes.
Is there a problem?
They said they don't have the colors you suggested. Do you think we can change it around for a bit? It might take a while if we insist what we want, and you know I'd rather not worry about this later.
I think it'd be better if I handle this one myself. Excuse me.
She walks into the shop without another word, leaving the two of us standing outside. As soon as she's out of earshot, however, Miss Wright lets out her giggle and swipes the business card cleanly off my hand. She smiles, a bemused little thing spreading across her face, and waves the card in front of me. I wish she'll do that more often, the smiling thing. It suits her more than the other one she frequently shows to the
I
media.
look away, and the next thing I know, you're picking up women. On the streets, while the sun is high, no less. I'm not sure if I should be appalled or amazed. Whatever happened to the Zach I met a day ago? About as tall as you. Photographer. Quite the gentleman. To tell you the truth, I'm a bit disappointed he's gone.
It ain't like that, Miss Wright. And I'm sure Miss McCullough is not the kind of woman to let herself be picked up by strangers, let alone people she barely knows.
Oh, shush. Let me have my fun. And didn't I say you can call me Hannah?
She gives the card back to me nevertheless, and with it her mood fades into a more pensive one. An odd look settles on her face, yearning, a bit wistful, and she looks back towards the shop display window. There's something remotely interesting in it for me when I follow her line of sight, though. A few trinkets here and there, for a rug, a sofa, a wooden side table lamp, and all the tasteful picked and arranged to resemble a typical antique living room. On second thought, it does look comfortable, but why they added a crib beside it baffles me. Unless, of course, the people they're hoping to market to are those who already have children, or about to have one, then maybe it is fitting. Peculiar choice of decoration aside, it does make for a nice icebreaker if it's not on the same level of weird and completely out of the blue. It's still leagues better than an awkward silence, which is definitely too out of character for a personality like Miss Hannah.
Oh, I think that one looks cute.
Hannah balks to my surprise, shuffling 2 steps away from the window and glares at it with such vehemence as if it did something remotely scandalous. A funny sight when taken out of context, and I probably will be laughing, really, if I understand that warranted such reaction.
I wasn't looking at the crib.
I wasn't really talking about the crib, Hannah.
Very good then. But it wasn't the crib, all right.
Alright, I get you. But that's not it. Honest. I was just saying the stuff that was on display there looks nice. Or at least as nice as it can be compared to the ones we visited earlier. But I'm sure your interior designer has something different in mind for your mansion, so don't mind me.
I was hoping that would be enough to cut the topic short. Instead, she sighs, leans a little close to her, and runs her hand through a lock of her hair. There is a far-flung look in her eyes as she even fixes on the concrete curb.
You need to stop looking at people like that, sweetie.
I'm afraid I don't quite catch your drift, ma'am.
I suppose you wouldn't be aware of it. Do you know you always carry this kind of phase? Like you're always staring at the world with this honest look. Like all there is to see is all the good in it.
Frankly, I don't see anything wrong if it's like that. I mean, there always has to be something in it. You know, a sprinkle of kindness here and there. Otherwise, we'd all be miserable.
For you, maybe. Some people have to fight through it just to see that. And kindness isn't always a great thing to have around. Sometimes too much of it can hurt.
Makes you wonder where this is coming from, how bad things have really gone for her to have this view. I do understand her sentiment. I do. Still, when it's the last thing you can cling to when things have gone irreversibly bad, sometimes you simply don't get to make
Besides,
choice.
the point is, it's impossible to lie when a person is looking at you like that. Or I could, but I'd feel like a horrible person afterwards. Did you hear that, Mr. Zach? You just made me feel like a horrible person. I sort of wish I had one like it. Just so people would stop lying to my face.
Or you can start by being honest with yourself. It shouldn't be quite hard. Friends don't lie to each other, don't they?
I guess so.
So what was the lie?
She draws in a breath, lays a soothing hand to her stomach.
But it was really the crib I was looking at earlier, silly. You're right, Uncle Zach. It's cute, but the pattern's not to my taste. I'm pretty sure Marianne could do something about that, though. At the moment, what I should really be worried about is if I'm ever going to be a good mother to this child. Mad! I can't even tell the father he's going to be one in a few months' time.
I was right, she was pregnant when she was vomiting. Smart me.
Probably doesn't even want anything to do with this whole pregnancy thing. What am I going to do, Zach? Because right now, I'm absolutely at a loss.
Oh.
A beat.
Oh!
The realization strikes me like a ton of bricks suddenly bearing down on me. More than a sound must have shown on my face because Hannah lets out a chuckle. The lump on her shoulders disappears altogether underneath her
Don't
mirth.
look so surprised, dearie. Tied the knot 7 years ago, remember? Don't you think it's bound to happen?
She brandishes her hand in front of me, and the unassuming silver band on her finger glinting against the late morning sunlight for a second. She eyes it lovingly, almost tenderly, despite the trace of sadness in her voice. For all I know, there's an entire story there. I'd ask, but that would be too inappropriate even for friends. It's not my place to meddle to
Or
begin
at least
with.
that's what they've been saying early on. My whole social circle would be saying it's a long time coming.
But the kid is something you want, right? Because if it ain't, then that's a whole other problem.
Of course. I wouldn't deny I've been hoping to have him or her for a long time now. But then, now that we're here, all of a sudden, there are a whole lot of other things to be worried about. Business, a new home, public image, my own husband, and I don't know. I didn't really have anyone for a role model. I practically grew up with nursemaids pampering me every step of the way. What if it happens to this baby as well? Oh, I can already see how this will end.
Huh. I guess it's not just my sister.
What?
You and my sister. I mean, you're both having jitters or something like that. That's what it's called, right? First baby jitters? Mind you, she was really convinced she'd do everything wrong then. He even called me in the middle of the night. Asked to switch places the day she found out she's carrying a new member of the family. Never mind how utterly impossible her request is.
I'm quite sure I haven't done anything of that sort yet.
Oh, you don't know that? My brother-in-law has been telling me things 5 weeks into my sister's pregnancy. Said she's one cranky pregnant lady. Man, good thing I found a place for myself years before that bundle of joy arrived, huh?
It can't be that awful.
Who knows? I think we'd better leave it for Mr. Right to decide, yeah?
Provided he comes around. He just sounds so repulsed every time the idea is brought up.
Then maybe you should say it to his face. No mincing of words or beating around the bushes.
And if he says no?
You haven't even told him yet. Besides, that's his kid. Don't people usually say fatherhood changes men? I wouldn't call myself a living testament, of course. But there ought to be something that will hit him in that idea alone.
A wrecking ball would be nice.
No. Laughter escapes me before I can stop it, and for a moment I thought I have done something wrong when she doesn't join in. He's still her husband, no matter what jests or complaints she hurls about him behind the media's eyes or in the presence of people she trusts. But when she does her chuckle, a small hesitant sound at first, I find the rest of my unease slipping away.
Whatever it is, my point is, you've got no idea what will happen. In the same way, you don't know if you'll be a good mom. Trust me, my sister's been there. It's perfectly normal. If my opinion matters, though.
A long second of indecisions go by. I can feel her eyes filled with nothing but curiosity boring into me while she waits for the rest. It's just a simple sentiment, one thing I think she needs to hear for all the doubt she's unwilling places on herself. I'm not sure if it should come from me. I'll be damned.
I think you'll be a great mother, Hannah.
If she has answers to that, I don't get to hear nor does she get to say it. As soon as it's out of my mouth, the bell hanging over the intake store door chimes, and out comes Miss McCall. For more than one reason, I've never been so relieved or talked. If our talk got
Everything's been
interrupted.
taken care of for tomorrow, Mrs. Wright. You'll have everything you requested delivered early. I've left them instructions, but I may have to visit again right before your housewarming party to check for a few things. I hope that's acceptable to you.
More than Marianne. This is a little early to say, but you did marvelous work with the mansion. I can't wait to see all of it come together tomorrow.
I'm only doing my job, ma'am.
We are here to tell her that a ghost is trying to kill her, and we still haven't done that part yet. Like, come on. We got this.
Needless to say, it's always a pleasure to hear a client is satisfied with my work.
Nonsense! You have every reason to be proud. I know you've already established your name here, but I'll still make sure word gets out, of course. I think I've got a few friends who might be interested in decorating their homes. I'll see if I can introduce you to them tomorrow.
I really don't want to impose, Mrs. Wright. there's still a lot to be done, and I'd rather be keeping an eye on it myself.
You know well enough I'll still do it. You too, Monsieur Le Photographe. You better be the one taking the pictures for the event tomorrow, or I'll be very upset.
We blink at her, confused. Last I checked, I have nothing scheduled on my plate tomorrow. A couple of fleeting thoughts did cross my mind, like working on personal projects, but with the expectant expression on Hannah's face alone, I've wondered before how they got Isabella to sell I've wondered before how they got Isabella to sell them the mansion with all the paperwork and loops it has to go through. Well, now the how is already standing in front of me, and it's one giant ball of persuasion in human form. Hannah hasn't said anything yet, but I already know what my answer will be. Oh dear. Okay.
What event?
Our housewarming party, dearie. I've already sent invites through your publisher. They should have informed you of it by now.
I may have probably missed it. I haven't gotten the chance to check my mailbox yet. If deadlines, real-life happenings, they can be pretty hectic. I'll try later, but they might have already assigned it to a different photographer if they haven't received my reply yet.
That's not a problem. Nothing a little call from me can't fix. I'll have them know I'm specifically requesting for your presence. It shouldn't be too hard. Just promise me you'll show up. I expect to see you both there. No excuses.
Good company, good music, good food. Of course I'll be there.
Lovely. I hope we have that settled then. I'd love to stay and chat, but unfortunately I have an appointment scheduled with the doctors after this. You two will have to excuse me.
Are you feeling fine, ma'am?
It's nothing big.
There's a short while in which her hand faintly touches her stomach when she says this. Her smile as she does so, a tender thing itself. She might never let it cross her mind, but motherhood would suit her. The kid is already loved even when he or she has yet to have a sense of the world. Candid moments like this, I wish I had brought a camera.
Sorry
for.
we had to cut this short. I'd love to have lunch with you two, but, well, you two know how it goes.
It's quite fine, Mrs. Wright. I need to get going as well.
Is it somewhere far from here? I can have my driver drop you off on the way.
No, please. There's no need for that, Mrs. Wright. It's just within the city.
I see. What about you, Zach? We did leave your push bike at the mansion. Don't worry, I'll have someone bring it to your home later.
Nah, I live within the city too. A few blocks from here, in fact. I only visited earlier because...
The photos. Damn, I've completely forgotten about them. My hand grazes the side of my pocket where I've kept them since this morning, and sure enough, they're still there waiting for the whole world to see them.
Zach, sweetie, you're zoning out.
Miss Hannah, earlier, at the mansion. I think it would be better if you take a look at these yourself.
Seeing is believing, right? I reach into my pocket and pull out the photos, handing everything to her. Recognition flickers across her eyes when she reaches for them, and I have to stamp down the tiny twinge of regret in my stomach for having the gall to show it to her. Only it cuts deeper the instant both her and McCall's expression changes, and it's not a good look. To say she's repulsed would be a total understatement. All this time, Hannah has been nothing but direct, saying what she feels, expressing what she wants. Away from the glamour and camera lenses, she's a whole different person. But as she goes through each of the pictures, I can't get an easy read on her.
Zach, dearie, what is this?
Your photos. The ones you requested copies of. I mean, they came out that way, and I thought you should know.
Oh, I get it. You know, I've heard before that artists can be a bit weird. Have you ever gotten that kind of comment, Marianne?
Not in my line of work, I'm afraid. Or ever, Mrs. Wright. I'd rather keep my personal hobbies away from my actual work. Less stress that way.
Well, I suppose it just never crossed my mind that the saying applies to you as well, Zach. But talent's what's important, As long as you make good art, it doesn't matter.
Oh, no, that's... You see, when we had that photo shoot yesterday, there was something.
I wouldn't say I don't appreciate it. I did ask for copies, darling. But would it be possible for you to give me normal-looking ones? Preferably with my head intact. I admire the effort you took to edit this, though. It looks authentic. Frankly, if I show this to some other person, they'd probably believe those silly rumors about the mansion. Good publicity, but not the kind I'd want for my new home. So please.
She drops them back in my hand like they're very service burned.
If you could redo this, that would be wonderful. I'm positive you can do a better job than the one you just showed. Just try to keep the edits to a minimum,
Yeah, I can, sure.
You can take your time, of course. And speaking of time,
She leaves without so much as a wave. I don't have to take a guess to know I've dismayed her, or in her own words, weirded her out. Besides me, Miss McCullough shakes her head. What are the odds I've also ruined my chance with the job she offered earlier? Very high, I'd say. It's a foolish idea in the first place. Miss McCullough departs shortly after Mrs. Wright has taken her leave, muttering something about getting a quick lunch before fetching Beruthiel from Chris. I don't know what or who Beruthiel is. It must be important to her if it's kind of in a hurry. Well, she doesn't seem to be fond of small talk, something we can both agree on. Lunch sounds good, or a walk around the city maybe? With the sun as high as it is now? Nah. And after how things with Miss Hannah went, I simply can't muster the appetite for anything at the moment. If I don't do anything with it now, I have this impression I will rear its ugly head again. By then, things might be too late to fix. What other choice do I have? Ash? Rebecca? In all likelihood, all they'll give me is a pat on my back and a Z-Man, go get some sleep, you're at it again from Ash. I talked to Isabella, but I haven't seen her around since she showed up at my apartment 2 days ago. Weird. There is one person, though.
I should have thought of that first.